think the early seeds were planted for recognizing both now how I, the sea and surfing is kind of my medium to work with, bring different groups of people together to work through healing or trauma and things like that. But to realize that those seeds were planted so early on. So when I was 10 years old, this part of Donegal also welcomed and received of children who had been impacted by the Chernobyl disaster. And I connected with that because Chernobyl disaster happened in 1986, the same year I was born. And I just thought that there was this, there's just that kind of meeting children at kind of my age who had never seen the sea before, coming here, for respite and for their health to improve, to even breathe the clean air. But they came one day to be by the beach and to go surfing. And I just, for me as a 10-year-old, having always lived by the sea, I can't even remember the first time I surfed. It's just been the thing I've always done. So I can't be separated from it. To then meet children, kids from another part of the world, and the first time seeing the sea and just recognizing the power it can have to transform in a moment, that sense of like mood and energy, and really stayed with me. And then, later on in life, I competed for a really long time around the world and as a professional surfer. And I think around, I suppose about 10 years ago, I started to get a bit disillusioned in that, or not, I felt a bit contained by it all, and confined and restricted by being in this kind of bubble that felt really increasingly artificial, that portrayed surfing in really just one way, of this kind of romanticized notion of chasing, for the perfect, trying to search for the perfect wave, and kind of selling this image of surfing that just it didn't feel authentic or true. And for me, surfing then becoming this medium to like better explore and get under the skin of a place as a way to connect across cultures with people when you're having that kind of shared experience in the water. And so one of those journeys was that trip to Iran that some of you may know on this call, but that was probably, it's been the most pivotal journey I could have ever taken, and the most unexpected, to go to that kind of a place with surfing and to view it through the lens of surfing, and tell us a different story of a really kind of, I think, misrepresented, misunderstood part of the world. I used to struggle with this notion of balance, that it's this like kind of constant state of equilibrium, so that it has to be like, like steady all the time, and you can't sort of, overload at any one point. But what really changed for me in my relationship with my own energy and around learning how to care for myself and find the balance was actually through a greater awareness of cycles, and in particular my own inner cycle and menstrual cycle. But before I get to that, like that's quite a recent journey, and so it's only really a few years ago, I met a remarkable woman called Ruby May, who was at the time apprenticing with the Red School. And I was just like, wait, what? There's a whole school dedicated to menstruality and menstruation and women's cycles. And so I've been going deep down into that world since. But what I recognized was that I have also been living in relationship with natural cycles my whole life, growing up in somewhere like Donegal by the sea, really learning about, tidal cycles and seasonal cycles of weather patterns, even how waves are formed, and, the energy they create, and they move in cycles. And a wave is almost, when it breaks, that's actually the collapsing and breaking of that circular, cyclical energy, because it's coming into contact with the seabed. So and then of course the lunar cycle, I was born on a new moon. And so I always had that awareness, and I was tracking already the influence of different stages of the moon on my own energy levels. And then it just never occurred to me to actually go inward and realize, oh, there's another dimension to this, and it's my own inner cycle, my menstrual cycle. So in a funny way, it's not until I hit my 30s that I began that journey to actually come back home to my body, even though I'd been an athlete and competing and a surfer for so long. So that's helped me understand the value of the ebb as well as the flow, and really honoring that there is an ebb and a flow. Yeah. There isn't an always on state, that is not natural. So it's helped me step out of some of my default patterns and really step into these greater cyclical ones that honor an ebb and a flow. And what I find fascinating is that I also have a different energy when I go into the sea. So around, wherever I am in my cycle, my menstrual cycle, and whatever the moon is doing, there's moments where I feel more energetic and that I want to like ride faster or do quicker, like move in a different way. And then there are other times, like even when I'm on my moon or bleeding and I go and I surf, sometimes it's actually, I'm maybe not catching as many waves, but I'm just so much more connected. There's just, I just feel like this lovely intimacy, rather than being the more external energy. I feel it's often a real power, like inner power within myself, like really self-connected when Beautiful. I surf that kind of my own inner winter time. Yeah. It's so huge. And the role women play when it comes to water. And like a huge part of my work also asks that how might we restore a relationship with water, but also how might we restore the ocean as a safe space, like a safe and healing space. The ocean and water bodies, because often in the world, although, it's such a place of power for women, and women are like water protectors in the world, but also most vulnerable. And that really, I find it staggering when the 2004 tsunami happened, 70% of the drownings were actually women. And that is largely also to do with, I suppose, the culture around the sea and the beach not being a safe space for women, but also that recreation and play is not a thing for women to do. And it's just, and then not having access to swimming lessons and things, so many things like that. And yet it's such a powerful way to come into relationship with our bodies when we're in water. When I've done that kind of water work with women, it's so therapeutic and healing. And then there's such powerful activists and advocates for water, and who I've been learning so much from, and the water protectors, in particular First Nations in Canada, and Elder Doreen Bernard from the Mi'kmaq, who I met at a UN Ocean Conference, which was so top heavy with science and policymakers and European Union. And then Doreen was there in the mix, and she opens with this water ceremony and encouraging us all to leave our glass of water out during the full moon. And I got invited while I was there in Nova Scotia to a water ceremony, peace pipe ceremony. So it was a ceremony to give thanks for the water, and also to stand in solidarity with all the water protectors, who are largely women currently, fighting against a lot of what are real kind of colonial, environmental, industrial, capitalist takeovers of access to water and clean water and rivers and all the waters.